Hi, I'm Professor Lee Jensen, and today we're going to be talking about deliverable number 6, where we use our continuous integration pipeline to deploy our backend pizza service, the Jot pizza service, to Amazon. So previously, you've already set up the functionality necessary in order to host that within Amazon. You set up ECR, the registry for your containers, and you set up ECS to actually host it there. You configured Fargate to load those containers up and to elastically deliver that content over an application load balancer to your front-end customers there. So what we want to do now is make it so that we modify our continuous integration pipeline so that GitHub Actions can actually push every time there's a change, a commitment made to your repository, your backend repository. It automatically creates an image, container image, and pushes that up into ECR, and then triggers a deployment of that image through Fargate and then eventually into your load balancer. So if I go look at the instruction here, I can see that their step number 1 is just to make sure that you got ECR configured correctly, and hopefully you've done all that. If not, go do that right now. The next step is to actually authorize GitHub Actions so that it can actually interact with ECR and ECS to do the automatic deployment as part of your automated pipeline. So what we're going to go do is we're going to go over to the IM service, and we're going to modify the role that you created previously to do your front-end deployment to make it so that your back-end repository, the Jot Pizza Service repository, can also execute commands using your OIDC credentials that you authorize through Amazon. So we're going to head over to the IM service, and we're going to go look up the GitHub CI role, and that's the one that you created previously. We just want to modify what that thing does now, and that's 2 parts. First, we got to change the trust relationship to say that that the Jot Pizza Service repository can actually execute commands, and also give it the rights that it needs, the permission that it needs to actually push things into ECR and actually update ECS. So let's modify the trust relationship first. If I click on that, it's displaying that trust relationship, and you can see where we previously added in that the Jot Pizza front-end repository can make changes, and now we want to make it so that the back-end one can do it also. So I'm going to push the edit button here, and I'm going to scroll into here, and I'm going to go back to my instruction, and I'm going to grab both of these values out of here. So that contains both the front-end repository and the back-end repository, and I'm just copying that so I can paste them both on top of what I have here. Paste that in there, make sure it looks right. It looks like I'm missing a comma, put that in there, and that's good. And then I have to replace this account ID with my actual account ID for Amazon. So I'm going to just click on this, click on copy that account ID, come in here and replace that, and now I'm all set. This authorizes both of my GitHub repositories for Jot Pizza to be able to get credentials to execute commands within AWS. So I can go ahead and push the update policy button, and that's good there. So the next thing I want to do is actually update the permissions. So if I click on the permissions for this role, then I can come down here to the permissions and see that I've got the Jot Pizza CI deployment thing. And we set this up before to work for our front end to be able to modify CloudFront and also to be able to push things in S3. And you can see that's my permissions that I have right now. And so we're going to click on JSON, and we're going to edit these permissions to add in the ones that are required to actually modify ECS and ECR. And if I just go back to my instruction over here, you can see that the policy is already set up in here. You just have to copy it and bring it over. We can review this really quickly so that you can see what these things are supposed to do. The first one is I'm allowing anybody who has this policy to be able to modify any action within ECR on any resource. So that's really broad, and that's actually not a great security thing. We would want to actually firm that up and harden that so it only had the rights to do the specific actions necessary to actually insert a container with a container image into ECR. But for right now, we're just going to leave it general. The next thing is that we're allowing our GitHub action to be able to describe the tasks and to be able to register new tasks. And we need to do this because we're going to change the task that's actually executing into Fargate every time we deploy a new container out there. Then we're allowing it to actually pass the roles. So we're going to pass this role into the container services. And then we also want to be able to deploy using ECS, the new service that's actually out there. So those are things we have to add to the permissions. I'm just going to copy this and head on over to my edit policy here. And I'm just going to put it at the top of my policy before everything else. And I've got to fix my syntax errors in here. So I just need another comma in here. And that should fix it, except for I need my account ID in here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste my account ID that I had from before. And then we should be good. Oh, one more place for account ID. Okay, got all those different permissions in there, allowing me to both modify ECR and ECS. And I'm going to go push the next button and then confirm that I actually want these changes made. You can see that I've got those in there now. And we're good to go. So that takes care of all of our configuration for allowing the GitHub Actions script to be able to actually modify the services within Amazon we need in order to deploy our backend. Okay, great. Now we want to go modify our deployment script, our CI workflow, so that we can actually push our container image up into ECR. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're doing here. The first step is to actually create our distribution. So you already should have a Docker file as part of your project now. We created that in a previous step. And we demonstrated how to do that manually to actually create that and then push it up into there. So now we're just going to take that same logic and we're going to copy it and go put it into our CI pipeline for the project. So I'm going to navigate over here, open up that project pipeline, close this up, and come down here to the bottom. So after we do all our stuff of writing our configuration file, running our tests, setting the version, and updating the coverage, I'm just going to go in here and paste that in, fix my indentation so it's actually properly inserted. And you can see all I'm doing is just making a directory called distribution, copying my Docker file and all my source code for my backend, and then I'm replacing the secrets that we have in there that we set up for our database and our host name when we created our database previously. So that's going to modify this configuration that's right here. The stub values that we're using when we test with the database inside the container when we're running our GitHub Action workflow, that's going to replace that here with actually the credentials that we're going to use to talk to our database that's actually running, our MySQL database that's actually running in Amazon. And that's what that's going to configure there with those three edit commands. Let's go see what our next step is. So now we want to actually create our artifact because we've got all our files there in that distribution directory. I'm going to copy that there and paste it underneath here. That looks great. What's our next step? Okay, now we've finished our build, like everything is in there that we actually need to be able to create our container and deploy it. So the next step is actually to start the deployment process. So I'm going to add a new job here called deploy, and it's going to have abilities to get secrets and communicate with OIDC, because we're going to actually execute some commands against Amazon, and that's what that is mainly doing there. So I can go ahead and create my new job. And then we're going to go add our steps to it. So first I want to download the package that I created during my build step. Okay. And then the next thing I want to do is get my permissions. So I'm getting my authorization token from Amazon using OIDC. And that's what's going to happen right here. So now after this, I'll be able to run use the Amazon CLI within my Docker container running under GitHub Actions to actually get an authorization. So that'll get me my token. And then I actually want to log into ECR now that I have that authorization. And then I want to do something interesting here. So I have to set up my machine emulation because I'm running in like a Linux computer here, and that one's running like who knows what kind of architecture here. So I got to make sure that I have the ARM architecture because that's what I'm targeting within Amazon, so that I can get a cheaper Graviton processor running there. So these two steps right here just set up that emulation and make it so I'm ready to actually build using that emulation. Okay, and then finally, I'm just going to build my container using Docker commands. So I'm just going to execute some Docker commands here to build my container, and then I'm going to push that right up into the registry that we specified previously. So pull that into here, paste it in, and we're good to go. So that's all the steps that I need to actually build my container and push it up into ECR. And if I go ahead and save that now, I can actually test and make sure that this is all working right. So come over here to Git, and I'm going to enhance my CI pipeline to push container to ECR. Push the commit button, push that up there. And if I go over and look at my build right here in my actions, you can see that that's running right now. And I can actually examine what's happened with our build steps. So I've created my distribution, I did my artifacts, that's all good there. Container's done, and now I should start my deployment step. That's going to get my permissions from OIDC. So apparently that's failing at this point, so we need to go figure out, okay, what did we do wrong when we actually configured our OIDC connection there? So let's go back over into our roles here, because that's the most likely thing where the problem is, and let's go ahead and look at it. And we can see that we set up our reference to both the JWT Pizza repository and also the JWT Pizza Service repository. But, I can see it here. Instead of putting in the GitHub user ID, I actually put in my AWS account ID. So that's wrong. So if we edit that, come back in here and modify that so that's actually our user for GitHub, BYU CS student, and put that in both places. And go ahead and push update policy. And that shows that it's really easy to make some small little thing that messes up your pipeline. You just have to be really careful and watch what you're doing so that you don't do a simple error like that. So hopefully now if we come back here and we can go ahead and just rerun that job from where it last failed, starting with the deployment phase, and see if that actually corrects our problem. And there you go, we got our token, everything's running great there. And we're going to do our other steps. We're setting up our machine emulation there so that we can build our ARM container instead of just an Intel one. Okay, there we go, we're actually pushing our image up there. And once that completes, everything's cleaning up there. And so now I can navigate over to ECR, look at our images here. Here's the ones I had previously. And when I refresh, so we can see the last one we did was 1026. Click on that now, and I've got an 1131. So there you go. My ECR has been updated with my latest image of my Jot Pizza Service actual build. Check, that's a big step forward. And so now with our image in ECR, we're ready to go and actually figure out how to use our GitHub Actions pipeline to be able to actually push that image from our repository into Fargate and load it up so that it can actually be used by our customers. So you should have already set up ECS, you've already got it deployed there, you've got your load balancer and Route 53 pointing to that. Now we just want to be able to update it. So in step number 4, we're going to first download our existing task definition that we're using to deploy our containers. Once we have that task definition, we can modify it so that it actually has the new image that we just created in ECR. Then we can deploy that task definition. Just go ahead and call into ECR and tell it to push that out there. We're going to use the Amazon Actions deploy to ECS action there to make that happen. So let's go ahead and grab this first one here. Toggle back over to our code. And at the end of our deployment, after we've actually pushed it into ECR, we're going to go ahead and grab our existing task definition. Step number 1, great. Then we're going to modify that with step number 2. And then the final one is to actually then kick everything off and deploy that. So that should be it. We should be able to actually then run that and then be able to test our container. So let's go ahead and commit this. So let's update our CI pipeline with ECS deployment. Commit that and push it up. Then we can navigate over to look at the execution of that and see how we're doing. So there's our task. Our build's going to run again. We're going to let that run here for a bit, and then we'll be able to examine what's going on with the deployment. Okay, our build finished. Now we can go watch the steps on the deployment. This will take a little bit of time because we got to go and build our container and actually push it up into ECR. Okay, there it goes. It's pushing it up into ECR. And now we've downloaded our test definition, created a new task definition, and now we've deployed. So that pushes everything out. A minute here, this will turn green, but it looks great. So now let's actually go look and see what's happening. So if we navigate to our cluster, so this is our backend ECS cluster for Jot Pizza Service. Come into here, and now we can see all the different tasks and services that are happening here. And you can see that there's actually two different tasks that are going on here. We've got one that's our current old one that's running, and then we've got one that's actually pending. And as that thing comes online, we can actually come over here to our load balancer, and we'll see for our load balancer target group that there'll be two different tasks coming in here. So we're not seeing it yet because it hasn't actually finished deploying that. But as soon as this starts to go green, then we'll actually see the load balancer going off there, and it will drain the old container out and start routing requests to the new container, showing us that our green-blue deployment's actually working fine, because it's going to check the health of that container to make sure it's good before it actually switches the load over to it. So now that container's running here. Okay, so coming over here to our target groups, we can go ahead and refresh this, see what's going on currently. We can scroll down to our targets, and we can see that we have two of them. One of them is currently draining, and one of them is healthy. So eventually all of those requests that were going to our old container are going to drain out, nothing will be going there, and the load balancer will automatically redirect everything to our new target. And that's way cool. So now if I come over here to our pizza service, then we'll see that we got our timestamp for the current time, which looks about right. Yeah, so this is currently right now. So I know that actually updated, and I've got my latest version out there. So all the cool stuff happened there. I just with my continuous integration pipeline, every time I check in, it's going to actually run all my tests, make sure everything looks good. It's going to build my container. It's going to create an image for that container, push that up into the Amazon ECR, the registry, the container registry up there. And then it's going to kick off ECS by creating a new task definition, which points to my new image, and push that out to my Fargate hosting environment. The load balancer is automatically updated, and so that the new version becomes available and the old version is drained out without any disruption at all. So let's go look really quickly and see what's left to do here. So it's saying the last steps here is that you're going to actually test out that it's working right, just by running against curl. So let's go ahead and do those steps. So if I come over here into Warp and paste that, I'm saying that's my host there. So I'm just setting up an environment variable for that, and then I can go ahead and do a curl command on that host and see that it's actually running there, just like I was seeing over in the browser. Now, if I hit the same server with the order menu one, I'm going to see that I don't have any menu items in there. And that's because I haven't initialized my data within the database yet. But I can go do that based on the instructions that we did before. So if I go and click on that information over here, I've already set up my host there. And so now I can log in as an admin. Go ahead and hit that. And so I've got my admin token there, and I can go ahead and add my different users. So if I add just my diner user, putting that in there, you can see that worked fine. And then I can go ahead and add my franchise user. And that will set me up with my stores and with my franchise user. And then I can go ahead and execute all the commands to actually set up my menu too. So I'm going to set up my menu. Everything's good there. And then I'm going to go ahead and add in both my franchise and my store with that franchise user that I created previously. Everything's good there. Okay, so now I'm all initialized. So if I do that command that I had before to actually test my menu was, then I should get a different result here. Yep, and there you can go. You can see, we can pipe it into JQ and actually see that my menu looks great. Nice and good. Got all my pizzas all set up. So now the last step to do is actually make it so that my front end is using my new back end. So in order to do that, I have to go to the configuration file for my front end and change it so that instead of pointing to the factory service, that it's actually pointing to mine. So we can do that now. I just need to go over and list, and then I'll change into the .pizza a code base, open up Visual Studio Code with that, and head on over to my environment variable. So my production environment, I want to change that one. So instead of going to the class repository, the factory one, I want this to go to pizza service, but it's going to go to BYU CS student.click. And then I also want to change my development environment. So whenever I'm testing things locally, I'm going to be using my actual backend code instead of the factory's backend code. And then I can go ahead and push that up. So if I go push those changes up into GitHub, just tell it I want my backend to go to my service. And once that's deployed, then it's going to be going to my front end code is going to be actually going there. So how am I going to actually know that that's working? So one thing I can do is I stuck all those pizzas in there, but what if we went and put in like a special pizza in here that'll just let us know that we have this one and nobody else does. So I'm just going to copy this first line right here and go back over to my instrumented data here. And I'm going to create a new pizza. So all those bearer tokens and everything should still work. And we're going to make a BYU special pizza. And the title of it's going to be, Cougar. Cool. And push that into there. So now I should have a new pizza within my menu just on my my service that I'll be able to see when I bring up my front end. So let's go check to make sure that our front end is actually executed. Check to see that it deployed properly. So go into our actions and you can see that's deployed properly. So that should have pushed into S3, my new code, updated CloudFront, and now if I go to my front end pizza, so pizza.click, that should bring it up. And if I go to my order, and look at my different pizzas here, I should have a BYU Special Cougar. So that shows that my front end is now actually calling my back end, and I've done everything. I've got my front end being deployed to S3 and then hosted on CloudFront. I've got my back end building containers and putting those containers into my Amazon container registry, and then I'm loading up that container with a fully scalable, elastic back end hosting service. And whenever I push into either one of those two repositories, and that code automatically goes out. Check, check, check. That's awesome. And that's phase number 6.